Welcome to Political Paradigm. I am Terry Ikumi. We're talking education today, and my guest is a professor of science education with research expertise in girl-child education, science education, curriculum studies, chemistry education, and research methods. She is the first female from Jigawa State to obtain a PhD in the rare field of science education. And she brings about 20 years of experience in education, governance, and developmental research to a new role in government. Welcome the Minister of State for Education, Professor Suwaiba Ahmad. Welcome to Political Paradigm, Prof.
Thank you, and nice meeting coming here for the first time.
It's a pleasure as well. I'd like to start off this conversation by finding out from you how it's been. But first, I think I should congratulate you on your professorship. I think you just became a professor of science education late last year.
Yeah, October 2024 is with effect from October 2024.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
To find a woman from the north, soaring that high in education is something. But let me ask you, how have you found the ministry so far? You're just about 3-4 months in.
Yeah, about.
So how's it been so far since your appointment?
Interesting. As somebody that has always been at the side of practice as a lecturer and also as a development worker, I've always been in the field. We keep seeing things as we are practicing, and we always have an opinion. Lecturers always have an opinion. Things should have been done this side, things should have been done like this. And as also someone that works in the development space, and I do a lot of, I support states in developing policies also. So it's like, then I am in a position where I understand the practice, and then to some extent I also understand the policies because I support states in the development of those policies. So now it's giving me another window into the education spectra. So I'm now having like a whole 360-degree view of the education sector. So it's very interesting. I'm finding it interesting and exciting at the same time.
So that's very good. I'd like to know how you've transitioned from an educationist to a minister where you have education bodies under yourself as well. So I'd like to find out what you found. Because you now say you see things from two different perspectives.
I find it very interesting, and I'm coming now to realize that there are a lot of factors that comes into play when you talk about education. And I'm sure this is not only particular to education, but other sectors as well. There are different kind of categories of people that are working towards a common goal, that is at the end of the day to have a qualitative education in the country. So it's like every bit of a person has to do a particular thing for things to go smoothly, and how the relationship, how they relate with one another. There's different departments, different individuals, how they relate together, how they work together, transit into whether we have an efficient and effective system, or whether we have problems in one direction or the other. So I'm finding it very interesting, and we are trying to navigate that relationship to ensure that at the end of the day, we are able to put in place not only policies, but those policies that we put in place have been fully implemented.
I'm curious, all your education were in Nigeria.
Yeah. From
basic to being a professor.
Exactly.
Were you state-funded, self-funded, or family?
For me, I'm a campus kid. My father is a lecturer at Bayer University, Kano, now a retired professor. So I grew up on the campus and therefore attended staff school. The staff school, of course, is free for every staff child. So it's funded by the federal government. Since it's a federal institution, it's funded by the federal government. So I did my primary school, my secondary school at Bayer University, Kano. Of course, I also did my first degree and master's also at the same institution. So all this, we don't pay tuition, just some few levies that we pay. And then I did my PhD also at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, which is also funded by the federal government.
So, Honorable Minister, with your local education, I say local because all your education were in Nigeria, and this new clamor for foreign education by Nigerians, what do you make of it? What do you think is the problem?
Well, that question is an interesting one, if I may say so. I think there are different factors, as I mentioned. Technically speaking, because of so many factors, that the education we have now in the country, there is room for improvement. The statistics coming out is nothing new. The statistics are out there. We have a lot of issues in terms of the quality of the education. And at the same time also, I think it's also a matter of probably interest and perception. Some people perceive that probably going out, and because probably they have the ability to pay for that education, they prefer to go out of the country to do the education. And at the same time, you know that even within Nigeria, some people prefer to send their children to private schooling. As I said, there are a lot of factors. The government school, for so many reasons and for so many factors, are not operating at the optimal level. The expectations, the learning outcomes, as I said, there are a lot of room for improvement. So I think these are some of the issues that are leading to people taking their children to private institutions or private schools, or even out of the country.
I'm curious to know how the government sees the other aspect of it. Why you say, on the one hand, anybody who is able to afford it would want globally. You would want to send your children outside where you think is most favorable for them. But then there's another aspect of the state of Nigerian universities. And we find that, and of course, this has been the reason for quite a number of repeated strikes by universities and polytechnics, so to speak. How does the government see this clamor for an improvement in our university or tertiary education system generally?
Okay, let me just rewind a bit to talk about at the tertiary level. I can tell you that, as I said, there is room for improvement. But I can attest to the fact that the tertiary institution in Nigeria, especially the universities, the education is still very sound. Because at various levels, if you look at the performance of students that graduate from our universities, especially the federal universities, you see that they are able to compete globally. On whatever scale you put them, they are able to compete for jobs, they are able to compete for spaces, for master's program, PhD program, so they are really doing very well. So I can say that even though there is room for improvement, but that at the same time, our tertiary institutions are really trying, and we are still respected by other countries in terms of the graduates that comes out of those tertiary institutions. Well, with regard to what you have just mentioned, of course, there are a lot of issues that we've been seeing, issues around there is room for improvement in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the facilities, and of course, there is also the issue of so many strikes. These are factors that this administration, under the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we are working very hard to ensure that we bring an end to all those issues that actually are affecting some of the factors that are leading to...
Well, mostly it would be infrastructure.
Infrastructure, yes. There is issues around infrastructure. We don't even have much issue per se with the infrastructure. Rather, with probably where we need to improve is in terms of the facilities, the laboratories. And part of the things we are doing now, we are building mega laboratories across all the 6 geopolitical zones. We have identified a central university, and we're building a very big multi-purpose laboratory to improve, to give opportunity for these universities to increase in terms of the number of admission that they do, especially in the sciences. We know that most parents send their children out of the country because they cannot get admission to study courses that their children have interest in, like medicine, nursing, radiography, all these medical science courses, and other probably professional courses like architecture and that. So by the time we're building these additional facilities and allowing the students at the university to have more carrying capacity for this course, we are increasing access for students so that if they are going to naturally admit only 50 students, maybe they can be able to admit 200 students.
You know, this brings me to the issue of budgeting. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on Nigeria's budgets for education. It would clearly seem that Nigeria is not paying attention to the UNESCO recommendation of 15 to 20% of the national budget. We're still hovering between 6 and 8. That was under the Buhari administration. The Tinubu administration, with this current budget, which is slightly an improvement from the previous budget of 2024, makes provision for, I think, about 7% of the national budget. The capital component of that budget is just about 953 billion naira. When you look at a budget like this, what does it tell you, and how is your ministry going to be able to manage 953 billion as capital to address some of the concerns you've raised, especially with the laboratories?
If you look at the budget itself, education as a sector is one of the top priority. If you remove two other sectors, education has the highest budget in the budget of the country. So I can say that even by having this position, you can see that really education is in the heart of the government. It's one of the key priority area. And don't forget that apart from the budget, we have other sources that goes into education. We have TED Fund, we have UBEC. All these are funding that goes into the education sector. So for me, I believe if you look at the amount of money being budgeted for education, and if you look at the whole budget and analyze the budget and see the position of education in the budget, you can see that really the government is trying.
So on that, I'd like to ask you, it's a good thing that you've mentioned that your minister, if you think that 7% is fair enough, regardless of the recommendation by the UN, the UNESCO, and then you see these other fundings that you've brought up, TED Fund and the others, would you say that they've been impactful, that we can point to the impact of these funds over the years, especially from your standpoint as minister? Well,
let me now talk not as a minister, but let me talk as somebody that has been in the university for over 20 years. I can say that TED Fund has actually revolutionized the tertiary institution in terms of the support they provide to this institution. Most of the buildings we have at the university are as a result of the TED Fund intervention. At federal level, every year you have annual TED Fund intervention that goes into building additional infrastructure and facilities. We have theaters, hostels, facilities, administrative block, all as a result of the intervention by TED Fund. So if you go to any university or college of education or polytechnic, you discover that most of the buildings are actually credited to TED Fund. So I can say that really it's contributing and the impact has been felt.
Let's now talk about northern education.
Yeah.
You're from the north, and I want to first ask you about your experience and what was the propagating force for your level of education. Not all the time do we get to see women aspire this high and actually make it this high. And you say your dad was a motivation for you. So when you look at your peers in the North, why do you think that the North has struggled with Western education?
Things are improving. I can say that now in the North, opportunities are there for everybody to go to school. Unlike maybe 30, 40 years back, where there is still reservation to Western education. I consider there are a lot of factors. Now let me go back to my history. I taught history of education maybe 20 years back. You know, before the coming of Western education, already there is an existing education structure within the North. That is the Islamic education. So by the time Western education came, there is a conflict in terms of acceptance of that because of the existence of a particular education system, and then also the culture itself. So there is a bit of a resistance. But then as things are gradually moving, people are now better understanding why the Western education. So of course things change. And I can say that this is not really only particular to the northern part of the country, but it's more so in the northern part of the country, because not only that there is the existence of Islamic education, but also the culture itself, the way the culture is, the belief that for a woman it's better to stay at home rather than going out, and also men are the ones that are maybe it's preferable for them to go for the Western education. So there are a lot of factors, but as I said, things are changing. People are now gradually understanding, not even now, 20 years back, parents started understanding that really we need the education not only for the boys but also for the girl, because in the north is twice more difficult for a girl to actually prosper in terms of going further with her education. But nowadays, even in the rural location, you discover that parents are trying to push their daughters to go for the education.
But does your ministry have a plan to improve girl child education in the country?
Of course, it's part of why we are having this discussion with you. For someone coming from the north and also someone in education that has an understanding, and if you look at the statistics, out of the number of, we have about 15 million children, depending on the statistics we are looking at, of children that are considered out of school, you discover that a high percentage of that number is the girl child. So at the ministry right now, we have a lot of initiative targeting the out of school children, including provisions of vocational training, provision of startup park or soft loan to start your business. But then we want to specifically target the girls because of the high percentage of those girls that don't have that opportunity. So for right now, we are introduced. Yesterday, I inaugurated the committee that are going to develop the work plan and implementation plan for a program that we are targeting the girl child. We are calling that program Lumina. Lumina is from the term illuminating her path in terms of education and economic empowerment. So this program is targeting creating access to the girl child that does not have an access for different reasons. In the north, mostly we have rural communities where you discover that the nearest location of a school to a particular community may be long distance, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. We have instances of 5 kilometers before a girl can attend a school. So in these instances, you discover that parents may allow their boy child to walk that distance, but may be a bit scared of sending their daughters to that long distance because of various factors that are obvious. So we want to see how do we give access to those kind of girls that don't have them. And then at the same time also, because of poverty levels, some parents don't enroll their children. They rather send them for hawking. They send them to serve as house girls in urban locations. While in the south also, we have other factors that are also affecting the girls attending school. Of course, for them also issues around poverty. Sometimes the girls drop out of school. They will start and then they will drop so that they can support their parents in terms of doing businesses, getting something to support the family. And then apart from that also, we have other factors like early pregnancy. A girl might enroll in a school, but then because of a mistake may have to drop out of school, and it's become a problem because by the time you drop out of school, before you are set to go back to school, you may have aged 2-3 years, and therefore you cannot go back to your normal school and fit into that school for many reasons. So what we want to do is we want to do a mobile schooling. This mobile schooling, we want to go to those communities. In those communities, the schooling, we want to package it in that we may not need to build the schools. We may build, but it depends on the location. In a location, if they have a mosque or a church that we can use as a school, then we can make use of that. If they don't have, we have plans of building sustainable unit. These sustainable units are cost-effective units that we can build to serve as those schools in that community. Or even if we have the traditional ruler, it depends on what we have. We are doing the mapping and the analysis right now, but we are trying to see that, of course, that school is in that community. So in this regard, the Lumina program is divided into 3 phases. We have the root, we also have the stem, and we also have the bloom. For the root, we are targeting the mothers. As we all know, by the time if the mother is economically viable, then she will hardly send her daughter to go for hawking. She will hardly, interrupt the studies of her daughter. So we are targeting the mother. And this is a short course. Just 2 to 3 months, we'll give you skill training. By the time we give you skill training, we'll try to give you also either a grant to start your business, or we give you a sub loan that you can start your business at the same time. And then we are also talking with private partners, private organizations, so that they can set up aggregation centers within that. Let's say you pick one particular estate. Within that, say we want to set a location where it can be an aggregation center. That we are going into partnership with private organizations, so that by the time time they start their product, they have where they can go and sell those products. We are also doing mapping. We are talking with these business people and asking them, for instance, what commodity do they have a need for that they can buy off these women that we are trying to train. We went to, one example that I can give is just a typical example. We talked to people in Singa Market in Kano State. Singa Market is one of the biggest markets we have in the state and even in Nigeria. So when we asked some of them, are they willing to mop up, to set up these aggregations? And they said they are. And somebody told us that if we can be able to produce petroleum jelly, no matter the number we are producing, and he will give us the quality of what he wants, that they will mop it up. They will buy it. They have a market for it in the neighboring African countries. So this is what we are doing across. We are starting that program in 12.
Across the country?
Across the country. We are doing all the mapping. We are going to partner with the state to do this. So we have that root phase where we are going to do training. But there is a caveat. If a mother wants to enroll into the root phase, then she must enroll either a daughter, a relative, or even a neighbor, because we want those girl child enrolled. It
has to be a girl.
It has to be a girl.
Just girls, or girls must be included?
Just girls. As I said, for this particular Lumina program, we are targeting the girl child. But as I said, we have other programs that are open for all sex. But for this one, we are targeting girl child, as I said, because the statistics of those girls that are dropping out of school, those girls that are being sent for hawking, that are not enrolled in school, is very high. So we want to be deliberate to ensure that we are enrolling them into the school.
Well, I'm curious to know how sustainable this is, because I know that the federal, in all you said, especially with regard to the out-of-school children, I was hoping to hear the school feeding program, which I think about 100 billion naira is budgeted for it in the 2025 budget. So how impactful? And you're a researcher, so I'd like to think that you probably researched on the school feeding program, because there were times when the quality of the food was questioned, the impact of the school feeding program was questioned, and we also had issues where children would come to school, eat, and then they're gone. They're not even staying to learn. So what are your findings as a researcher and Minister of Education with regard to the school feeding program? Because 100 billion naira is a lot of money.
Yeah. So what I would say is school feeding is under humanitarian, but we are talking together because though it's under them, but they're feeding our children. So even yesterday we had a meeting with the HM, that is Honorable Minister of Education, myself, and the Minister of Humanitarian, just to see, to actually ensure that we did something that is efficient. As you mentioned, there is a lot of talks with regard to how effective is the school feeding. Of course, we know the statistics out there. When we started this school feeding program, there is rapid increase in school enrollment. But then other factors came into play, the quality of the food, and then some students will go to the school and leave the school without actually staying throughout the period of the timing for the school. So what we're trying to do now, and the Minister of Humanitarian, they are working together with our ministry, is to ensure that we develop a mechanism to ensure that this time around when we implement the school feeding program, we'll take care of all those problems that were encountered in the first instance that this program started. So apart from the root, we also have the STEM. The STEM is targeting children between the ages of 5 and 15, where we have this accelerated curriculum at the ministry. That is, the 9-year basic education has actually been summarized into a 3-year, and it has been practiced in some of the states, and it's very efficient also. So what we are trying to do now is, in that STEM program, instead of the 9-year basic education, we have the 3-year basic education. We want to create 2 pathways for the girl child. A girl child can pass through the 3-year and obtain her 9-year basic education, or at the same time, if a child that is maybe 10-year or 11-year that has never enrolled in a school can do the foundational learning and re-enroll into the appropriate age grade that she's supposed to be enrolled in a normal conventional school. So we have 2 pathways for the girl child. And of course, even at that level, we are thinking about giving them a kind of a skill training so that at the end of the day, they have a skill that they can be economically viable even after that program. So for that STEM program, we have it, and then we have the Bloom. The Bloom is also the targeting adolescent girl child between the age of 15 to 18, and is similar to what we refer to as the upper basic, that is the 3 years senior secondary school, which is also operating the accelerated curriculum, is a 1-year program. So a product of STEM can fit into the bloom phase and can actually sit for Hawaii and NUCWA and transit to the tertiary institution. And then at the same time, our girls that drop out for one reason or the other can also enroll in that bloom phase and finish her secondary school, and she can go for her tertiary education. So it's also
in the enrollment, is there lecturing, teaching going on?
What we want to do, is teaching. As I said, we have scripted lesson, we are doing mobile banking, we have facilitators that are going to do the facility, and then we develop, right now the committee is developing, we already have the accelerated curriculum, but we want to make it more interesting in that we are including issues around gamification, dopamine-driven lessons, so that we capture the attention of the student to want to come to the school. So we are working on that curriculum to ensure that yes, we not only are the girl child enrolled, but they are also retained, and the passion and interest is developed in those children. So we have this complete package that we are working on, and we'll soon implement it. We are piloting this, and as I said, as we are all aware, education is on the concurrent list. It's not only at federal level we have limited school, it's at the state level that we have. So we are going to work together closely with the state government, with the State Ministry of Education, SUBEB, and the Senior Secondary School Board to actually implement this program.
So this pilot you talk about is to kick off in which state and when?
We are developing it. As I said, I inaugurated the committee, okay. But we have a criteria. There are certain criteria. We're going to focus on states that have, for now, at the pilot, we're going to focus on states that have the highest number of out-of-school children. But we are doing this in the six geopolitical zones. We are going to pick 2 states from each of those 6, from each of the geopolitical zones. So we are kickstarting the pilot with 12 states. And in each of the 6 geopolitical zones, we are going to apply that same criteria that we are identifying. Yeah.
At no cost to the parents?
At no cost to the parents.
At no cost. All right, good.
At no cost to the parents.
Let's talk about the school, the student loan program now. As commendable as it is, there are concerns with regard to private universities being excluded from it. But I would want you to speak to that and give us an update on the implementation of the student loan, because we clearly know that your ministry is on the board of NELFund.
And it's one of those initiatives by this administration that really we must applaud President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for this laudable initiative. As someone coming from a university, I can tell you, I can see clearly the impact. Let me give you an example, just to understand how NELFund changed the narrative of some of these students' life. When NELFund was first introduced, because of different factors, inflation and the rest, though you don't pay tuition fee, but universities have increased their charges. Before the introduction of NELFund, initially when I was a student, I was just paying some few a token. But then gradually it's increased. I know that most universities now, the charges are about 100,000, some less than 100,000, but around that window, some even more than 100,000, depending on the university you are looking at. And then if you look at states, like the example I want to give you, which is just one example, but I'm sure there are other states that we can give the same example. If you pick like Bayero University, Kano, for instance, you discover that this is a state where by the feeder states, most of the students that goes into those universities are students that come from a poor background and may find it very difficult to be able to pay that charges that the universities are charging them. In fact, just before the introduction of the NELFund, we keep increasing the deadline for registration because students are not registering because they just don't have the money to actually register. We had to, at a point, we had to do some mobilization to go to the community people that are well-to-do to see, okay, your students are not able to register. What can you do to assist them? Some of them are giving us, we started giving bursary award to actually support these students in the payment of the tuition fee. But with the introduction of NELFund, things drastically improve. Students can now be able to pay those charges. So when we have a drop in our admission, by the time we introduce this NELFund, the admission picked up like that. because students now are able to access the fund they require to pay for these charges. So this is just one typical example that I'm giving you. But when we had a discussion with the different vice chancellors and rectors, they keep saying the something that because of this null fund, they are seeing increase in the number of their admission. Initially, the admission number is dropping because of the money, the charges that the student needs to pay. So the impact is there and it's very obvious. You can discuss with any of the student. A lot of students are benefiting. But then let's come down to your earlier question when you say that there is exclusion of private universities from the NEL Fund program. So as I say, any initiative you are bringing, we know that we are operating in a country whereby our resources are limited, and no country, even the so-called developed country, they won't tell you that they have limitless resources. It's just not feasible. Anywhere you go, whatever resources you are using, they are limited depending on the number that you can be able to take. So it's a matter of looking at who are the group that this support will best benefit in terms of ensuring that they are able to actually get this education. People that come from a poor background that attend public school, without this support, probably they may never attend the tertiary level. They will be dropped out if they have started, or they may never enroll because they just can't afford the tertiary education. But for somebody that make the informed decision to go for private school, and he knows that I can afford this, that's why I'm not going for public school, because I have the money to go for private school. But this is my own, for me, this is the perspective I'm looking at it. So if you can be able to go for private education, you choose to go for private education, it doesn't mean that, okay, these students, we are yet to cover the people that are going to public school. By the time we say, okay, we are going to cover both the private school and the public school, at the end of the day, you discover that people that may really need this support may not get it. So for now, I'm sure we are focusing on those people that really need it. It's just like you go to the hospital, you have a minor injury, and then someone comes in with a major injury. Who do you attend to first?
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair analogy. Yeah. So in April last year, the government launched the National Education Data System, and the whole idea was to take stock of just about every school in the country and to comprehensively overhaul the education sector. And it's almost a year now. Perhaps you have an update on the extent of that. And the reason I ask that is that you have also talked about the aspect of infrastructure and how the government seeks to address it.
It's something that is ongoing. It has been approved, and they are in the process of finalizing it. And we are very concerned about the data because, as you know, if you're looking for any data, most of the time we depend on data coming from development partners. If you're talking about out-of-school children, the data that you rely on are not data that are being generated internally from the country, but rather we are relying on other bodies to actually give us that data. So it's a very good initiative that is ongoing. And apart from that data repository that the government has approved and we are working on, we also have another one that we launched, that is the NEDI, Nigerian Education Data Initiative, which is also targeted. We want a situation whereby with a click, you can be able to trust a student right at his school. Every information you are looking for with regard to education data is readily available to everyone. Just go to the website, go to dashboard, regardless of the state, regardless of the locality, you can be able to get that information. So this is also something that the ministry is really working on to ensure that we can now rely on our own data. Development partners can come to us to say that we are looking for this data. We are putting in place mechanism and structure to ensure that we not only get this data, but the data will be considered as valid and reliable. We are working in collaboration with other agencies, NIMC for instance. We are working together with them to ensure that we do that. And we are also strengthening other bodies that do collect data like NEMIS to ensure that they work together with this to ensure that we have a very solid and reliable data coming out of the sector.
Very well, then hopefully that's done, because I recall speaking with your predecessor on this issue and as it relates to school strikes. And he said that this administration is working so hard to make sure that no strike is recorded. However, we already hear pockets of concerns. Last year, ASU threatened. Some schools under ASU have, I think Sokoto recently lifted theirs as well. So I want to know from you what sort of engagement you've had with unions, university and polytechnic unions, to avert a strike so far.
We've been having series of meetings. And we are trying our possible best, and the meetings we've been having is not only the Ministry of Education, but all other stakeholders, all other ministries that are relevant to the cause of these issues are also part of that. Even next week, we are still having another meeting with them. So we've been on the table, we've been discussing, and we have an understanding between us and them, and hopefully won't hear about strike again.
So another thing that's been criticized is Nigeria's education curriculum. You are a researcher.
I'm also somebody that I can say is a curriculum expert.
Beautiful. So what are your thoughts on Nigeria's curriculum, and what improvements are we hoping to get under your leadership? So
right now we are doing the curriculum review. Just before we came in, the review for the basic education has been concluded, and we are actually reviewing it. My office directly is reviewing that curriculum review to ensure that all concerns about the curriculum are fully addressed before final implementation. And then, of course, you know that we have at the tertiary level, we have that CC Maths that the curriculum has also been reviewed. And then at NCE level, we are also conducting virtually all the reviews. We are doing reviews of all the curriculum across all levels. At the NCCE level also, right now we are in the process of reviewing the curriculum, and we are taking cognizance of new developments and new happenings within globally to ensure that they fit into the curriculum that we are operating. So the review is ongoing, and we are going to ensure that experts really support the process, they are part of the process, and also to take into cognizance stakeholders' concern with regards to the curriculum that we are operating.
Talk to us about this news of the 6334 system being abolished. Please explain that.
Well, 6334 system is not in operation anymore. You know that it was revised to 934 system, which is the 9-year basic education, and then the 3-year post-basic education, and then the 4-year tertiary education. What we are looking at is not something that has been finalized, but what we are looking at, we want a situation whereby it's not only 9-year basic education that we operate in the country, but rather a 12-year basic education. Because for us, we are looking at the need to ensure that every Nigerian child has at least that 12-year basic education. If we say, okay, 9-year basic education, what happened to the senior? Really, those graduates of the 9-year basic education, are they able to fit? If they don't transit to the post-basic, are they able to be really reliable? Are they equipped with the necessary knowledge for them to be functional members of the society? It's just for us to increase the knowledge that these students are having. And if you look at data that is coming out in terms of transition from the 9-year basic education up to the post-basic, that is the 3-year education, you discover that at that level, we have the highest statistics of dropouts. People that finish the 9-year basic education, the transiting is becoming a problem. So we want it to be smooth. Just like for now, it's smooth when you finish your primary school, you smoothly transit to JSS without dropping out. You see, by the time we implemented the 9-year basic education, there is smooth transition. The examination that sometimes becomes a handicap for the transition has been eliminated. They just sit for a promotion examination and they are able to get the 9-year basic education. It's just to increase the knowledge of our youths.
But that's been criticized while you push to increase the knowledge of youths. I know that there have been arguments against it. One of them is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Sylvester Onoja, who says that it would put financial strain on families. The idea of having a 12-year basic system, there are those who could do up to JSS and they can no longer afford it, and they would want to go into technical skills acquisition and all. So what do you say to those who argue about the negative aspect of this with regard to the financial strain on families, low-income households?
I'm a bit confused. with that question, because if you say that it's going to increase financial strain on the parents, then I begin to ask, if 9-year basic education, when we say 9-year basic, is 9-year basic free and compulsory education. Now we are pushing it to be 12-year free and compulsory education. So how is it going to be a financial strain on the parent when initially the government is giving you 9-year basic education, it's free. Now the government wants to give you 12-year basic education. I don't see the link between the two. But let me say this now. It's not something that has been finalized. It's something that we are trying to hear the opinion of different stakeholders. Right now, a committee has been set, and this committee is looking at all other aspects. It's looking at a 360 degree to ensure that we do this thing the right thing. Right.
So when you talk about the free education aspect, there are a lot of things, a lot of other costs that go into education beyond tuition fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you agree to that. And I think that's the aspect of the argument of Senior Advocacy of Nigeria, Sylvester Onoja, because you have to pay for books, you have to pay transportation, you have to pay some other little costs that come with education. Is the government covering all that as well?
Then let me ask you a question also.
I'm asking you a question based off Senior Advocate.
I'm just interested in saying that we have different programs that we are targeting in terms of giving the skills and training. But my question here is, as a society, do we feel it's acceptable for children to drop out from school immediately after the 9-year
if they cannot afford it? I mean, I think that's the reality of life.
But but look at the product that are coming out of that 9-year basic education. Do they really have the necessary knowledge for
Minister,
them to
I promise
drop
you
out?
that any right-thinking parent wants their child to go to school, but sometimes they are unable to afford it.
They are unable to afford it, right? Sometimes by the time the student, and that's why we want to do this transition. Because initially, most parents, by the time the government is giving you an additional 3-year basic and free education, it's supporting the parents.
Where does vocational training and technical training, per se, come in the new proposal?
You know, one of the key priority areas for this administration is the TVET. Under this technical vocational education and training, we have programs. Part of that is we are looking into converting the federal technical and science colleges into federal technical colleges, which we have some initiative that goes into that. We want to see a situation whereby we did a need analysis, markets, skill gap analysis, and we discover that we have a lot of opportunities for our youths that they can fit into to get a lot of money to be functional members of that society. For now, if you are looking for a tailor, probably you will be employing somebody from Cotonou or Benin, because our youths are not really trained to do that. If you are looking for people to do your POP on all those things, you see that people are coming from our neighboring countries, and they are the ones that are satisfying that market. So we want to do a situation whereby we train these youths. We did the skill gap analysis, and the technical colleges, we are going to ensure that all the necessary infrastructure and facilities that are required for those training are put in place.
At what point during the 12-year basic education model does vocational training come in?
The vocational training, of course, is done. It depends on from which school you start or from which system that you are operating. For instance, we have the pathway, the technical schools that we are creating now, whereby a student will enroll right from JSS1. So it doesn't fit into that other model that you are referring to, but a student can start. We know, for instance, our unity schools, it starts at the JSS1, student enroll from JSS1. So we have a placement examination that we do across the country, and then students are posted into these unity schools. So for the technical schools that we have, they start from JSS1, they can fit into that. And for these schools, of course, we want to do 80% practical and then 20% deductive. Where they go, we have a lot of internship, a lot of training. We are going into collaborations with industries to ensure that really these students that pass through this system have that technical system. So for that, you can see that a student that goes through, let's say, the Federal Unity School, the Federal Technical College, is a seamless transition with the 12-year basic education because he continues from JSS1 up to the end of, we call it, I can't remember exactly the name, but then we're not saying SS1, but it's just skip my mind. So, but they are going through
Grades.
that 6 year, not grade. They are going through that 6 year training, which in some of these classes completely, they are even doing it in the industries, full training to ensure professionalism. Professionalism goes into that. So the expectation is at the end of these 6 years, somebody can come out and not only be an employee, but can be an employer of labor also because of the skills that he's graduating from that. So for us, we believe, and it fits into the model of the 12-year basic education because it's a natural transition. But then at the same time also, we have, as I said, education operate at the state level, but at the national and the subnational level. So also the states have their own technical schools. Most states have their technical schools because even when the federal government was converting their technical schools to science and technical, most states did not do that conversion.
Are states buying into this new model?
That's why I'm saying we have not, we are just at the
It's a proposal.
It's a proposal.
Yes.
We are doing stakeholders engagement. It's just that people thought that it's like we are not. We are just throwing it out for conversation.
You know why this is important to understand the feelers you're getting from the state is that education is not the exclusive preserve of the federal government.
Exactly, I understood that.
So to the extent of acceptability by the state government would be very important.
Exactly.
Okay.
We are going into discussion. As I said, we are just touching base, doing stakeholders engagement. A committee has been set, and at the state level, we are going to bring them on board. Part of the committee that was set, there is representation from the states, SUBEBs, Ministry of Education at the state level are still part of the committee that are sitting down to look at it and actually looking at the model, cost implication, and everything.
Another thing that's of importance is securing schools. What's the federal government's move as it stands to ensure the safety of children as they go to school?
We have, at the Federal Ministry of Education, we have the national policy on safe school, We have a DEX officer that we are working, and we are also supporting states to actually domesticate the policy, and not only to do the domestication, but also to do the implementation, because it's two things to have the policy.
And this is not, and the reason I asked the question is that the Safe School Initiative is not, was from the Buhari administration. Has it been adopted by the Tinubu administration, or is there an improvement to it?
Governance is a continuum, because when administration started something, we shouldn't stop it. So, of course, we are continuing with that initiative. For us, as education is a priority, also the safety of the learners are also a priority.
I want to get your quick take on this, because it's generating national reaction, the shutting down of schools in 4 states for Ramadan.
Education is on the concurrent list. We have at the federal government, our schools are open. And then, of course, at the state level also, at subnational level, each state does its education. The schools are under the state government, and it's within their right to do that. For us, actually, we are trying to, it's something that we are trying to bring out a position on. But even yesterday, the Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alasa, spoke about this, and what I said is exactly what he said. The states, you cannot say that a particular state must do that, but then, of course, what we can do is to engage with the states, to actually discuss with them and give them our own position with regard to that. What I can say that, just like the Imam has spoken, and as someone that is also a Muslim, even in countries that are recognized as Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, they don't close their schools. So that is very clear. There is nowhere that is said because you are fasting, you should actually stop schooling. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went for war even during Ramadan. So it's not something that you can say that, yes, you need to stop schooling to do that. And there are other factors that the state should consider in taking that decision. What about the time that is going to be lost when the schools are shut down during the fasting period? So it's something that we're looking at, and we're going to engage the state in discussion on.
Great. Just before we go, I know we've held you here for too long, but just before we go, I want to get your thoughts on the impact of the USAID, the Trump administration pulling out funding from the USAID with regard to concerns around terrorism funding. Has that impacted our funding? Because I know we do have some donor funding from the USAID for education.
I can say that at the ministry, it's like it's just like as if somebody informed us that that is going to happen.
Oh, because you were prepared for it.
We were part of the things we discussed right from the word go. Dr. Twinji Alaus and myself, what we discussed is, as a country, we need to take ownership of our education. We need to ensure that whatever we do, we bring our own money to start that program, to start that initiative. Because by the time you allow development partners to dictate, to bring the funds, then they definitely dictate what they want to do with that fund. But if as a government, we are very serious and proactive to actually identify our own source of funding, and then we say this is what we want to do. If a donor partner wants to support us, then let him come and support us on our own terms. So we started our operation in that regard, looking for funding for all the programs that we want to introduce into the ministry, and then this happened. So at least we are already we have already, it's like we know that something like that is going to happen. So we have already identified where we are getting all our supports from and all our resources from. And then that happened. All
right, great. So let me take your closing statements just as we say goodbye. Your wealth of experience is something that a lot of people are looking forward to. And just like I told the former minister, your predecessor, that 2 ministers under the ministry suggest the importance of education coming from the Buhari administration, where we had a minister who served 8 years and said he did not know anything about the portfolio he was carrying. So what are your thoughts, closing statements with regard to improving education in Nigeria?
What I can say is that we are very serious. This administration is very serious about education as a priority area for President Bola Ahmed's Tinubu administration, as contained in the renewed Hope Agenda initiative that we have, the roadmap. There are about 13 thematic areas, and out of those 13 thematic areas, we have about 23 key deliverables. And we have identified key priority areas, and those key priority areas are targeting inclusive, quality education for all. And the 6th priority area that we're working on, quality education is one of it. So we have different initiatives that we are working on in ensuring that we provide quality education, because this is a very important aspect. If you want to do education, you have to do it qualitatively so that our youths can be able to compete anywhere they go and they are productive members of the society. We are looking at quality assurance, school grading, all aspects of quality is something that we are working on. And then also the TVET is also a priority area for us. The out of school children, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the medical sciences. As I mentioned, we're trying to give additional facilities, infrastructure to ensure that we improve in terms of this 5 key areas. And then at the same time also we are looking at the girl child education, we are looking at out of school children. These are all key priority areas. So for us, we are going to work very hard to ensure that really we increase access to quality education.
Professor Suwaiba Ahmed, thank you very much for coming on Political Paradigm.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have on Political Paradigm. If you would like to catch this episode and more, please go to YouTube and search Political Paradigm, or go to channelstv.com. I've been speaking with the Minister of State for Education, Professor Suwaiba Ahmed. I'm Terry Kumi. Goodbye.